Hi again, everybody. This is the announcement you've been waiting for. My name is Peter, and I help direct the events here at Strand, where books have been loved for 91 years and counting. For a little bit of history, the Strand was founded in 1927 by the Bass family over on what was then 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled until after 91 years, Strand is the sole survivor, still run by the Bass family and still housing new and used books, including some in this room from the 15th century, which are in that safe over there, which I don't know how to open, so come back sometime. Tonight we are excited to house something very different in the form of an evening with Glen Hansard, whose life has seen him go from a teenager busking in Dublin to touring the world on his own and with the bands The Frames and The Swell Season, sharing the stage with Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, and other sainted individuals, and winning both a Grammy and an Oscar for his work in the film and stage musical Once. He's here tonight to discuss This Wild Willing, which some of you have in your hands and some of you will have in your hands after the evening. His fourth full-length album under his own name, and to share a bit of the stories behind it before its release. Joining him to do that is returning Strand Events alum Alan Light, one of America's leading music journalists, formerly of Rolling Stone, founding editor and editor-in-chief of Vibe and editor-in-chief of Spin magazine, as well as the author of several books on the Beastie Boys, Leonard Cohen, and more. I could not be more excited to share this very special evening with all of you, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Alan and Glenn to the Strand.
So thanks, everybody, and welcome. And wow, they packed every last person they could in here, didn't they?
That's wonderful.
When it comes up around and behind, that's another thing. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for joining. Here's how this is going to go. We're going to talk for a little bit up here, take some questions from you guys. So think about what it is that you might want to ask Glenn, or that may change over the course of our conversation. And then I will get out of your way, and then you will hear some music, and that is actually the best reason to be here. So that will be your evening. So Glenn, thank you, and good to see you.
Thanks, Alan. It's great.
We've done this before.
Yeah.
Before we talk about the new record, I have to ask about last night. I don't know if folks were there, but I know you had a little bit of a wild ride at the Van Morrison tribute last night.
Well, I have this pedal, and whenever when I use the pedal in rehearsals, it always works. And then whenever I use it on stage, because I stamp, because everything is just, you become super animated when you're up there. And so I hit the pedal, the guitar went out as usual, and I found myself having to kind of wing it.
How's winging it at Carnegie Hall?
Thank God that room will take anything. You know, you can go out front and you can sing the song, and the room gives it right back to you. So it sounded fine. Actually, sounded better.
And this was not a small undertaking. This was singing Astral Weeks at a Van Morrison tribute. It's not a small swing that you were taking.
No, but it's a song that I've been playing since I was 15, and it was the first song that when I started busking, it was the first song I made a few quid with, because with Van, you know, you can sing Dylan songs and people will kind of nod and tune into you a little bit, but when you sing Van, it's almost like his kind of the melodic line, if you like, is really lends itself to people kind of tuning in and kind of going, oh, I love that song, or you know, and Astral Weeks, of course, being such a great song. So it's been part of my life, that song, since I was a child. So doing it last night on that stage felt really amazing. I was so nervous though. I was thinking, well, I remember the lyrics, but it's complete muscle memory from beginning to end, the lyrics to that song, how it flows, you know. But of course you second guess yourself in that moment because you're in such an amazing room. But no, it worked, and the audience sang, and it was really special.
Excellent. So there's a new record. So we hear. This Wild Willing comes a couple of weeks fully formed and out.
Yeah.
And what's been interesting to hear you start to read this record is it seems like these songs got made in a very different way, that these songs got created through some new approaches, new thinking.
Yeah,
and not setting out to say I'm going to do it different this time.
No, it just sort of happened, and I feel the more we hang on to strict ideas of what we do and who we are and what kind of music we make and what kind of person we are, that the more we hang on to those ideas, the more we might miss opportunities and things that can happen unexpectedly. And I think I was just in a really interesting headspace with this recording, because I went in to make an acoustic record. Went in with Joe and Ruth and Javier, and I asked Eamon to come over, and we were going to make this kind of very acoustic thing. And then I met these Persian musicians in Paris at a dinner, and we set up all night playing music. And I was really struck by the Iranian melodic line. It sort of reminded me so much of the Irish melodic line, and of course the Irish music is very influenced by North Africa, and so there was a kind of there was definitely some rhyme with the music we make back home. And I knew immediately meeting these guys that the record was going to take a turn, and I suddenly became excited because I was no longer in control, and I knew that if I got these guys in, the record was going to take on a feeling that I was really excited about. But then to kind of counter that, because I didn't want the record to sound too esoteric, if that's the right word, I invited some experimental electronic musicians that I know from Ireland, and my only direction to David and Dunk, who are my friends, was I want you to disrupt my music. I just want you to come, anything you hear, just come in and just stick something in the middle of it and make it feel, because that's actually where, from years of being in the frames, and whenever somebody played something slightly off, it was always the moment where you went, and you could kind of spin out into a thought then and follow that. So I found myself in a very exciting place where I realized that all of these songs would now be improvised songs. So every song on the record, actually Brothers Keeper was a song before the record was recorded, but everything, actually that's not true. Leave a Light, the last song, was also a song, but everything bar those, the other 10 songs are all improvised in the studio.
So that it's the I think of the Miles Davis quote where he said there are no mistakes, it's just where you go from the mistake. I mean, that sounds like sort of what you're...
Yeah, in the frames I was known as Customs. The lads would joke and say, "Oh, here comes Customs," and the idea was that everything had to pass customs. So every idea that anyone had in the band would, and so the joke was that that kind of that classic image of the singer being the control freak. On this record, I totally let it go, and I trusted everybody that came to the studio. It wasn't what Eamon might play, for instance. It was the fact that Eamon was playing it. So I let go of trying to edit or turn it into something. I really, maybe I just whatever headspace I was in, I was really excited about this collaboration. And it's funny because I played the record to my ma. My ma's in hospital, and I went to visit her, and I played her the album the other night, and I realized that I still don't know it. Like, I'm listening to the record and it's just brand new to me. I keep hearing things in it. I'm like, I'm really happy for that, because when I try to control things and I try to enforce my will upon the production or the arrangement, it gets really boring really quickly for me.
So I understand, obviously hearing these Iranian string players would introduce a different tonal element into this, but it seems like it isn't just that it also introduced some different structure or lack of structure or something. What was that leap? Was it just saying, okay, if I'm going to go in another direction, then let's just open the whole thing up, or was there something that it triggered that freed things up a different way?
Well, those guys, the Koshevesh brothers, Puya, Mani, and Nima Koshevesh, they definitely brought me into a place where I wasn't comfortable. I was out of my comfort zone, and if you believe this idea that true beauty lies just outside of comfort, then I definitely was there, and I was really happy to be in that spot. But then also Paris really played a big role in the record, because I had gotten a writer's, I suppose I was given a room in the Irish Centre, the Irish Cultural Centre in the Latin Quarter in Paris for a month. And then I ended up and then I got it for 2 months. And I went over and I decided on a discipline I decided to get up every morning and write between 9 and 11.
Which is not your usual.
Not a bit.
No, I mean some writers work that way.
Yeah.
Work on the clock. I'll get this much done before lunch, then I'm good. And others, not so much.
Yeah, Roddy Doyle was actually saying, he said, just get up and go. I was pointing because he's over there. He's not there, but he's booked. He was pointing out, he's just saying, get up in the morning and just go at it and sit down at the page and don't worry if nothing comes. Just show up. And then there's a great Ernest Hemingway line from A Movable Feast, which says, if you have nothing to write one true line. Just write one thing that's true in that moment, and that will always unlock you and send you to another place. So I was writing a lot in Paris, and Paris had a huge effect. The same way that on Rhythm and Repose and on Didn't He Ramble, New York was really the city that really influenced those records for me. It was the sound of me living here, and so Paris ended up kind of stepping in to this record and allowed me to kind of loosen up. And it's funny, most of the writing that I did in my journal in Paris, I didn't use on the record. It was just almost like a process of freeing myself. I just write and write and write, and then so I went to a microphone. I was like, wah! I was loose, so everything was just. And then and I restricted myself. I had a few rules. I decided that every lyric on the record had to be an actual experience. It can't just be, that rhymes with that and that kind of sounds nice, so I was like, no, every line has to be an actual memory from my time in Paris. So now when I sing the songs, each time I sing a line, I'm really there. And that really has to count for something in terms of how that lands is really to be seen, because we haven't really been playing these songs very much. But it feels like the songs are landing. And the other rule I had was that whenever the word love or heart came out of my mouth, that I would exchange that word with the worst word I could think of, in order to stop myself using these, super banal words that we all use as songwriters. I mean, for me, boat comes up a lot. So boat had to just get knocked on the head. So, the audience is quite, I don't want to tell you the word I replaced it with, but if you imagine, if you replace it with the worst word you can think of, so every time you sing that line, you're like, oh God. So then you have to rethink. And putting these restrictions on oneself as a writer is very positive in terms of getting you, because, a word like love and heart, or a word like heart or boat or river or any of those things, they're wonderful if they're exactly the right word for that sentiment. But if they're not the exact right word, there are many, many others, and it'll put you in a different place, and it'll make you a better writer if you avoid them.
Do you do that for every project, come up with these kinds of rules and parameters, or was that a new thing?
It's a new thing. Because I was sitting down and I was walking around this city of, it almost feels when you're in, like it's the same here. It's the same in any place where there's big energy. Paris and New York have very similar. You can almost feel like you can pluck these lines out of the sky and here and there. And walking by where Joyce wrote Ulysses, which is only a few doors from the place I was staying, you just kind of get this sense, that you're just in a city that demands excellence. And I remember meeting a guy in New York years ago, and meeting him on the West River, and he was like, New York's a city of excellence. Everybody who comes here are great at what they do. That's why the city demands so much, and that's why it's such a vibrant place. And so I really feel Paris was like that for me. I just tuned into a different thing, and I managed to tune out of myself, which is the best thing. Anytime you can kind of tune out of your own, voices, it's a wonderful thing. And how rare it is to see ourselves from an interesting perspective, one that's not the constant, you're not good enough, it's not, this isn't going well, this song is shit, all that stuff that kind of monologues to our head. And sometimes shifting city can sort of knock you out of that.
It's and I don't know the exact chronology, but Paris right now is a certain thing. Mm-hmm. In addition to the history, the energy, the culture, everything that you're plugging into. I mean, there's also thousands of people marching and tearing up the streets right now. Yeah. Was that? I mean, there's the James Joyce side, but also was there the, right now 2018, 2019 piece of being there?
Absolutely. I mean, the city was vibrant and wild, and I witnessed violence on the streets and walked through it, and amazing feeling, like powerful feeling, terrifying feeling too. Also, just there's an amazing book. I don't know if they have it here. I hope they do. There's an amazing book by Edouard Louis, which I just read just before I come over. Young French writer, gay son of a working class French kind of macho, classic French, rural guy. And he basically talks about how French politics has killed the book's called Who Killed My Father? And it's basically about how, Chirac took his lungs, and he explains how that happened. And it goes through and eventually ends up with Macron eventually broke his spirit. But it's an incredible book. You'd read it in an hour. Maybe if they have it, you could pick up a copy. But it's an amazing vision of France right now. And, there's a song that I'll sing later on called Race to the Bottom, and the opening lyric is I'm sliding along by the Seine, it's May Day. The song's in my head once again, but the original lyric was like there's blood on the streets once again, because there was a lot of violence in the city, and a lot of volatility, and that, as much as that's terrifying, it's also really attractive. It's a kind of a compelling energy. Just for the crackle that it puts in the air, or? Well, more to do with the passion that is in people's faces. You know what it's like when you see anybody in the world who's truly alive. It's the most attractive thing. When you see someone who's just really in their own skin and really clear about who they are, you're just like, I really want to be near that. And Paris had a lot of that during this time, and still does. Yeah, so does here.
So was there a song, or was there even a moment within a song where you could, where you kind of felt it snap to focus, where you got a sense of, I see where this thing might be going? Yeah. You mean in the studio? Yeah. Yeah, there was a couple of songs that came out really out of the blue. Most of the songs actually happened while we were recording other songs. So, and it's that lovely thing when you're trying to record a song, and you do a take, and then maybe we'll do another one, maybe we'll do another take, and in the bit in between, you guys know it so well. In the bit in between, you just start noodling, and that's the noodle becomes the thing that you're like, okay, I know we did a take of that song, but can you give me that noodle? Because I'd really liked, and then you find yourself elaborating on the noodle. The noodle is probably the wrong word, but that little sketch, and then you elaborate on it, and before you know it, you've got this thing, and you're like, that's actually much truer than the song I was trying to record. And so in a way, it's almost like you're pulling the wool over your own eyes, and you're just trusting that actually the body knows what it wants to say. And so all of the intellect is going into trying to record this song that you sat down and wrote. Whereas actually the body is going, no, I actually want to say this. And so for me, there's a song on the record called I'll Be You Be Me. And I found myself singing these lines: your love's a bonny snare, it traps me in the evening, has me hanging in midair, now I'm swinging from the ceiling. And it was very erotic and very kind of sensual, and I was like, wow, this is, I'm following this, I don't know where it's going, but my love's an androgyne, she writes when I'm in slumber. And again, it was the truth of my life in that moment, and that was so much more vibrant and exciting than me writing a decent lyric and kind of going, oh, that's good, I managed to write a good line there, but the good line has nothing to do with you and the visceral truth which happens in between the takes, if that makes sense. It makes sense. I know that we both share the Dylan and Leonard Cohen fixation, which is, you're kind of talking about both of them in a way. I mean, the Leonard thing is the relentless working the lines and crafting, down to perfection, and the Dylan thing is just first take, best take. That's what it's meant to be. You're pulling both of those from both of those sides. I mean, from both of those approaches. On this record, yes. For instance, there's one song on the record called Weight of the World. It's an 8-minute kind of ramble, which starts
you can hear him singing out of tune. You can hear I don't know what I'm saying, and I kept going, and on the record it's like that 7 minutes or 8 minutes of music. We played it only once, and we didn't play it since. So, and it just ended up on the record because it was like, actually that just sounds like people swimming, and that's more important than it sounding like smart or it sounding concise. That's the intimacy that that's the thing you're always trying to share on stage, is how can you get to a place where you're being a musician on stage instead of just playing rehearsed songs, and instead of working to the script, which you have to do in order to present a show of songs and music. But how can we get to a place where I'm just like, I don't know what's coming, and in a way, that was what was really exciting about making these recordings, was that we found ourselves a few times, and we didn't know it in the moment. We just followed the moment. It was only a couple of weeks later, we're like, what was that thing we recorded? And then you play this 8-minute thing, you're like, that's a song. I didn't even realize it, but there it is. It's a full song. I'll fix that word because it's terrible. I'll change that a little bit, and we'll stick a big moog bass over the end of it, and then what we'll do is we'll subsume the whole song in noise. So those decisions were made later. The reason we subsume the song in noise is because the song just meanders to an end, which doesn't actually. So it's about allowing the raw, unfiltered thought exist, and then there's a lovely idea that if you take the tiniest idea, like the tiniest fragment of a thought, like one word, and you build it up and you embellish it, and you spend all of the time not on the great song you've crafted, but on this tiny little bit of sort of mood. Yeah, and you build on that and that and that, and you build only on that you sometimes might end up with something really amazing or really special. Now, not to say that my record's really amazing, but there are moments on it where I'm completely out of where I'm used to being. There's no Blue-Eyed Soul. There's no, there isn't really any boats. It isn't a romantic record. There isn't any. There's no love songs. There's one song. I'm probably yapping away here.
That's why we're here.
Okay, good. There's one song that I wrote to my ex-girlfriend, and I don't know, it just fell out, and I just was like saying, I miss you. And it's not that I miss you or I miss our love, which I do, but I just miss the habits. I miss the daily stuff. I miss the joke that you would get. I miss the thing that the way you would look at that, and I miss being able to sort of look at you and sort of go, and all of that shorthand that we shared. And so the song is just about, it's a pity that I won't get to experience that again, but I'm really happy for where you're at. So it's funny, I feel like it's an interesting one for me. I feel like I'm dealing with other stuff on this record. I'm not exactly. And Paris was a very central, to come back to the Paris was a very central part of that expression, whatever that is.
Now, the risk of recording, playing it one time and that's it, and using that. Now you've got to go learn these songs before you can play them.
Yeah. And I think one or two we'll never play, because they were just moments.
Just that.
Yeah, we'll just leave it there. I wouldn't want to try recreate that, because then it becomes a falsity of, it doesn't do the recording justice.
You mentioned I'll Be You, Be Me. That's right? Mm-hmm. Every time I say that, I think that's not right. I think
right.
It's the replacement song. I'm confused.
Yeah.
So that's a song that ended up with a sample from Queen as part of the track. How did we land on that as part of the sound for that song? And B, especially at this moment in time, how does one go out and license a sample from Queen, as they're the biggest band in the world at the moment?
Yeah.
Just what was all of that? Where did that come from? And then, what's the conception and what's the execution of that?
Well, when you invite electronic musicians into your studio, they come with a lot of samples. That's kind of part of their canon. We have instruments, they have samples. And so my friend David Cleary, somebody I've worked with for many, many years, an incredible collaborator and friend, said, that thing you're doing there, that bong, dong, dong, I've got to listen to this. And he puts the head thing on. He's like, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. It's kind of sounds like disco. And I would never have put disco against this melody. He said, and I was like, that's exactly what I'd asked him to do, you know. So it took me a few minutes to get my head around listening to a disco beat across this chord progression. But then within an hour, I was in love with it. And he said, listen, no one's ever going to find out. It's Queen. It's Queen and David Bowie. It's from the Under Pressure session. You know, it's a cassette demo taken by an engineer. I don't know how I found it, but no one will ever know. I said, where'd you get it? He said, YouTube. I said, eventually I asked him where he got it. And but it sounded so good. And if you listen to the sample, you can hear Bowie just go, he's doing this little thing. And I just loved it and thought, amazing. We'll probably get away with using this, because you know hip hop people do it all the time. They just sample stuff and they never go through the front door. They just steal it and hope for the best
until they get caught.
Until they get caught, and I fell in love with it. Of course, you always fall in love with these things. You know, the creative process. People are throwing stuff like, "Wow, I love this song." This song has just become a whole other thing for me. Actually, the beat ended up changing the way the lyric went, because everything influences everything in that creative process, and I was sitting with a friend of mine who finally convinced me to download Spotify, because I just never wanted anything to do with it. And I just kind of, I really feel sad that we don't, like, there's just that connection with holding, you know. Anyway, look, Spotify, I wasn't into the idea of it, and I eventually succumbed and said, right, well, what is it? And he said, you can make mixtapes on Spotify. And I was like, what? You can create yes, you can create playlists. So I thought, well, that's a great reason to do it, you know. So I went on Spotify, I created an account, and I immediately started making a playlist. But within 10 minutes of being on Spotify, and I really, like 10 minutes, the Queen song in question came on the speakers, and I looked at it and it's like 67 million listens, you know. I was like, okay, we're definitely going to get caught. So I
yes, that whole no one will ever know part just
And so I kind of started trying to figure out how to get to Brian May, because I know that Brian May owns the publishing on the Queen stuff, and I don't know that, I was told that. And so how do you get to Brian May? And I know Bono because I live in Dublin and he's a musician, and I said to him, it's a small town. It's a small.
I live in Dublin. I've been to a pub. I know Bono.
But it's kind of a bit like that. And I said to him, listen, you wouldn't be able to do me a favour. I'm after sampling Queen by accident. I could be in a lot of trouble. Is there any way you could get me in touch with Brian May? And he said, no chance, man. He said, Queen were a big band. And I was like, yeah, but you're a big... He said, no, you don't understand. Queen were actually a big band. He said, I've met Brian May once. There's no way. I'd be terrified to talk to him or call him. You're on your own. And so I managed then...
Did you get the Nobel Prize for that?
Exactly. Can't help you. And so I eventually we just went through the front door, and we rang the publishing company, and the publishing company took forever. And eventually Brian May... you know, because the film was out, and they were... And so this record that was meant to be out March 8th, and it's now coming out April 12th, and that's because Brian May just didn't answer the phone. But you know, we could have recreated this little drum loop. It's only a tiny little drum loop, but the fact that it's Bowie and Queen in the same room is like so worth half the publishing on that song, you know. So I was just like, so they, you know, they were very polite. They just want 50%, and so I ended up handing it over.
So I've got only a few minutes, but I did want to ask. There's so many, you know, and we can't go through all of these encounters and all of these things. I'm not going to make you tell the Van Morrison story, but I did hear that you did some work with Robbie Robertson. Somewhere in recent memory, and I would love to know A, anything about that, or what you're allowed to say about that, and also B, what it is that you take from these moments, these these opportunities that you've had with those kinds of figures. You know, how does that come back into the work that you do?
It's an incredible thing when you're just doing your thing and you're just being a creative human being, and someone calls out of the blue and says, would you like to meet Robbie? He'd love to meet you and talk. And so, of course, I want to meet Robbie. Of course, I want to go talk. And I went and we spent a little time in his studio, and he just told me the ton of Dylan. I mean, he literally never stops talking. He's the most. His storytelling is just phenomenal. And it was interesting because I'd got to spend a little time with Levon Helm up in Woodstock and actually talk and so it was really interesting to meet Levon, spend time with Levon, and then meet Robbie, and I read Levon's book, and God, it was so scathing about Robbie, and but I don't know these people. I don't know their lives. I can't read one guy's book and then decide I don't like the other. What is that?
Especially when these are what went on in the studio as things got written, as things got. I mean, if you're not in the room, you can listen, but
I mean, Robbie's whole thing was like, he said, look, man, I was in a band with 3 junkies. I mean, of course I'm the bad guy. Of course I'm the guy that showed up on time, and of course I'm the guy that got the publishing. These guys were a complete mess. Like he said, being in that band was horrendous. I'm probably speaking out of school there, but that was,
No, it's all in the book.
It's all there. Yeah. But he was doing a thing for Martin Scorsese, and he just said, "Do you want to sing on something?" And it's funny. I was just like, "Of course, I'd love to." And it was Van. Van was singing with him, and he told me some great Van stories, and I just spent an afternoon basically singing on a song that he was playing me. I wouldn't be able to recall what I sang or what the song was called or anything like that. It was just like, here, have a blast of this. Have a listen to this. Do that. And so I did it, and it was wonderful. But it is an incredible thing to when you're being yourself and you're doing your thing, it's almost like a frequency that you're operating at, and sometimes people will operating at a similar frequency will reach out and go, you're the guy to come, or you're the girl to come and do this, be part of this, bring your thing to this. What do you think this is? And I just feel really fortunate and blessed to have had that encounter with a couple of people.
I mean, do you take specific lessons from that? Do you take things that you just think like, oh, okay, the guys who, reach that altitude and achieve that thing, these are things that they're, things that they're doing or ways that they're approaching this? And do you take that, or do you just take back like what it is to be in their aura and whatever that might or might not lead you to?
Yeah, I honestly don't. I don't. I learned pretty early on not to put my heroes too high up, because if you do that, then all you're doing is diminishing yourself. And I don't mean to say that Robbie Robertson and I are peers, but we're both guys who make music. Robbie did it at a very high level for a very long time, and he still does it, and I'm doing it. But I wouldn't look at Robbie Robertson and go, oh my God, Robbie. I just like, that's amazing. The work he's done is amazing. I trust the art. I'm not particularly that interested in the artist, if that makes sense. The human being is just a human being. We have good days, we have bad days, and I've gotten to be in a room with some of the people that I admire the most in the world in terms of their art, and I've noticed that they're just really, people are just, when it comes to hero worship, I don't think there's any real room for it if you're serious about doing your own work. If you get into hero worship, that means that you're doing this, you're kind of, and I think you should always sit tall and do your own thing, and that will pull you into other people's orbits, because that has gravity, and so, there are moments when you pinch yourself and go, fucking hell, there's Joni Mitchell right there, but at the same time you have to put that away, and you have to operate on your own. It always comes back to your own work. Just work on your own thing. Everything is a lesson to come back to your own thing and make sure it's all right, make sure it's watertight. That's how I feel about it.
All right, let's go. We got to go to your own thing. We don't have another mic, so do your best to project. But if that's not your thing, I will repeat the question through in here so everybody can hear it. So, what have we got for questions from you guys? Over here, yeah.
Hello. So I got the opportunity to witness you backstage last night, interact with some awesome New York City public school students. some of who you invited here tonight.
Oh, wonderful to hear. Great. Hey, how's it going?
So, like you imparting wisdom to them and jamming with them, I guess I just want to ask, like, as a musical luminary, how do you feel about the state of music education in schools, and what's kind of the responsibility for somebody, a writer, a performer, to give back to the next generation of music makers?
It's a good question, and one I don't know much about. Because I didn't do music in school. Music wasn't really part of my world. It was more like my school really pushed you to learn a craft and get a job as soon as you did your, I don't know what you guys call it, but we call it our intercert. So when you're about 15, that's enough of school. Get out and get a job. So music wasn't really part of my education. And yet it was, for me, music was everything to do with my imagination. My uncle, who was pretty cool, had a guitar, and he taught me a couple of chords, and I really loved him and looked up to him. And I learned the chords, and I really, I grabbed onto music with every fibre of my being because it was the most exciting. And it put me out of tune with my life, and I just disappeared into it. And so I was very fortunate to find music that way. In terms of music programs, and I have no idea about that. I really can't speak to it at all, except to say the guys are amazing, and what they did last night was superb. And will you maybe, we don't have a drum kit, but maybe you'll give us a song later on? Yeah? Great. Because you should hear them, they're amazing. Yeah.
Yes? Yeah?
That question segues beautifully. Glenn, I feel like you've given me a gift. Your music has been a gift my whole life. But you've also given me this amazing gift of other artists. Every time I see you at Vicar Street, you pull up these people, and your friendships and your love for them is it's just beautiful to watch. And I need you to tell Lisa O'Neill to come to New York. She can stay on my couch. She's got to play her music here. I miss her, and I miss you, and I miss living in Ireland, and I'm just really glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very sweet. I think it, in Ireland it rains a lot. There are towns in Ireland where the sun never rises, and it's raining, so it's nighttime and rain all the time. No, I'm just kidding. But we have a kind of an indoor culture. We have an indoor what's the word? Artistic life, and there's nothing better than sitting around with friends and sort of going, what have you got? In Ireland it's very common for, have you got a poem, have you got a song? I mean, every single person in this room could give something to this evening at a push, a poem or a line or a dance, and so in a way that I've always felt that when the lights are on you, that it's your duty to because we have a thing in Ireland, that the singer calls a song. So if you sing a song, then you get to pick the next person. Exactly, and then that person picks the next person, and so there's a kind of there's an equanimity, or there's a sense that there is no, there may be someone leading the session, but it is, it's about us. It isn't about me, and I think we operate best. In the world, we operate best when we're thinking about we and not me, and overall. And I think in music, we can, in the smallest way, we can create this sense of, what have you got? What have you got? Because we've all got something, and it's about that. I've got something too, but I don't necessarily need to fill 2.5 hours of the evening with just me. I mean, I get bored with it,
There is something about those places you can't go outside that much, meaning Minneapolis, right. Seattle. If you're stuck inside,
yeah.
You've got to find something to do.
They say all the best bands in the world come from cold coastal towns. It's an interesting thought.
Anybody over there?
My dad and I fell in love with you when we saw it once. Huge fans for such a long time. Love it when we wrote the album. I'm a classical musician, and I guess it's kind of a cliche to say this, but I think it's a big experiment. Experimenting with other genres, it's just kind of what's happened. And what you're describing about putting the wool over your own eyes and trying to get away from your inner monologue is exactly what I'm working on right now. So do you have any advice for just getting used to playing in a new genre and exposing yourself in the best way, and just kind of not rushing, but hastening the process of kind of output in a new way?
It's a big question. Gosh,
Well, or at least any lessons from what this
Yeah.
process on this record was.
Yeah. Gosh. I would just say that in terms of, I mean, for me, being a kind of a singer, I don't listen to singer-songwriters. It's not that that's not a statement. I don't listen to singer, but I generally just don't listen to the kind of music that I make. You know, people always assume that if you make folk music that you're a folk musician, or that you listen to folk music and I don't. I listen to very, very different kinds of music, and that brings out different aspects. It just so happens that whatever the filter of Glen Hansard's kind of output, that sounds like folk music. It just so happens. It's not that I decided on that. It's just the way I play an acoustic guitar, and it tends to sound a bit folky. Does that make sense? So I don't put a limit on. One of the big things is not to call myself a folk musician. Nico Muley, a great composer here in the city, calls me, his nickname for me is Ernest Strum. You know, and it's a cruel name, you know, Ernest Strum, because you know, singing about your feelings, you know, or whatever it is. But I get bored with that. I get bored with that idea. And I want in music, you know, I think we're very smart. I think every one of us is, when we listen to music, we know when we're being put on. We know when somebody is just being schmaltzy, and we know when someone is being sincere, because we're very intelligent, and we just make decisions really quickly about that's bullshit. That's, you know, like there were musicians last night who went on stage, and for some of the songs, the whole side of stage was packed. And then for some of the songs, that crowd just filtered. No one made the decision that one artist wasn't as good as the other, but the body knew. And so you kind of find yourself, I'll go get a cup of tea, or I'll go, but it's not. I'm not going to get a cup of tea because this artist is terrible. I'm just not watching this. Does that make sense? We have this amazing thing, and all you can hope for as a musician is that when you put out a record or you put something on, you know, that you're not, you know, you're not just drudging over the same old thing, and you're not just trying to sing another song about a boat sinking, and you know that you don't try to just constantly rework that same thing. But if you do, then so be it. Then you do, as long as it's sincere. And I kind of feel like for me, I needed to just go fucking, you know, singer song. What does that mean? I mean, but I am. That's what I do. But at the same time, I just love. I mean, the Frames was a rock band and a very experimental band, and it really pushed me in areas, and I pushed it in areas, which was very, very interesting. And I sort of feel like this record is probably the closest that myself and Joe have come to making a Frames record in a long time, even though it doesn't sound like the Frames. So for me, just deciding I'm not a classical musician, I'm not necessarily a folk musician, I'm just a musician. I play music. That's the exciting thing, and that allows you to hasten, as you say, this freedom. I wouldn't be able to sort of. I don't think but what I would say is just play music with as many people as possible, like all the time. I mean, sitting in a room with 3 Persian brothers in Paris. That was a turning point in my life, not just in my evening or not in my month, but in my life. And my record, which is now a document of where I was in that time, hinges on one evening of a random meeting with these guys. And so that's powerful. I ended up using chords I never use. I ended up trying to play in their rhythm, which I managed to do successfully in the end. And it really changed me. And that, I think that's exciting.
This is a truly random observation, but I work part of my day at Sirius, and literally was walking past today. Todd Rundgren was doing an interview in front of an audience, and this was the exchange that I heard, was him saying, I'm not afraid of subconsciously imitating anybody else.
Yeah.
Because I know that's going to happen. He said, what I'm really worried about is subconsciously imitating myself. He's like, that's the part that I'm afraid, is if I'm just repeating these ideas, that's way worse than if I heard something that I'm copying that I didn't think about, or that I'm stealing, or whatever it is. He's like, that part's fine, but that's the one that keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Just interesting on the heels of what you just said.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Yeah, I really agree with that. Identity has to be fluid. You have to constantly, and as artists, we're dealing with moral ambiguity the whole time. We're constantly allowing ourselves to sort of look at things in a different way, and it can be very uncomfortable. But at some point, you have to own the word and say artist. I know that sounds like an intense wow, but actually you are. You're allowed to feel things and move into things in a different way. And ambiguity is actually the palette from which you draw. And for me, if I was forever known as the once guy, which may happen, fine. But I know that I have to keep looking in different places. And even if that means I come back to just making that same song over and over and over, it was an honest investigation,
Anybody? Way in the back, we'll do that.
Thinking back to your early days of songwriting, do you remember a time when you wrote something, or the first time or early time when you wrote something and you thought, that is really great? You really were into something that you made.
Yeah, of course. No, I do. When I learned how to play the guitar at about 12, I learned a couple of chords, and because my heroes were all auteurs, I immediately felt that I had to start writing songs. That I couldn't just learn other people's songs and then eventually start to write songs. I needed to be writing songs while I was learning other people's songs, because that was the job I was trying to find myself in. I didn't like any of them, and I remember around. I just had a strong feel. I was dropped. The Frames were signed to Island Records by Chris Blackwell in 1989. Or I was signed as a kind of a solo artist. They ended up putting the band together, and then we got dropped in '92. And I remember coming to New York. They did this awful thing. It's kind of adding insult to injury. So the record company dropped me, which was like, my whole life was just pointing towards making an album. I made an album. It wasn't a great album, but it has a few moments. And I made the record, got dropped immediately. The Cranberries were the other band that were signed at the same time as us. The Cranberries did really well, and instead of that meaning that we would get some of the Cranberries light, we were just dropped. So because they had one successful record from Ireland, they didn't need two bands. Which is kind of you kind of get it. It's sad, but you get it. But to add insult to injury, they sent me to New York to work with songwriters. They said, you're kind of, your songs are good, but we kind of like you. There's a couple of writers in New York we'd love you to go work with, and maybe we'll keep you. So they kept my publishing, but they dropped the band. And so I was sent to New York to work with these songwriters. I remember going to see CBGB's. It's funny, I'd love to meet those guys, because to see one of the guys, and I was supposed to work with him, and then there was another guy uptown, and then there was a girl that I was supposed to meet in Harlem, and then she was going, and I was going to write songs to these people, and hopefully these songs were going to, be better, and I would get an extension to my deal or whatever. And they put me in the Iroquois Hotel on 44th Street, and I stayed there for a month. I didn't meet any of the people. I went to see the guy in CBGB's, but thought it was awful, and didn't meet any of them, and just walked New York, and I didn't talk to anybody, and I just walked, and I was in a huge kind of moment, existential moment in my life, where the one thing that I wanted in my life more than anything, which was music, had just been taken away from me. Even though here I am in this amazing city, my heart was broken. I was really, I was grieving. And I walked the city, and I walked, and I walked, and I walked, and I wrote a song called Revelate, and I wrote a song called Fitzcarraldo, and I wrote a song called Angel at My Table. And I just got this growing sense of like, fuck you. Excuse my language. I just got this no one's going to tell me when my fucking time is up. And I just got like really angry, and I was able to put it all into these songs. And I came back, and the lads, and I was like, right, we're making an album. I don't care how we do it. And we ended up making it independently. We ended up doing, there's a bar in Dublin called Whelan's. we agreed with Whelans that we would play 10 concerts and that they would pay for the studio time. Then we went in and we recorded Fitzcarraldo, and that was the kind of, in a way, it took the knock of the record company dropping us to really make you question, what is it I do? And do I really want to do this? And because I know what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I remember when I wrote Fitzcarraldo, and I remember when I wrote Revelate, going, these are fucking good tunes. Like, these are decent songs. I mean, I actually, something inside me kind of just manned up in that moment, if you like. I kind of was like, right, I'm going to show them. And these songwriters I was supposed to meet, I don't even know their names. I wouldn't even be able to, wouldn't have a clue who they were now. But when I went back, I'd written them all myself.
But that gets back to the previous question and the calling yourself an artist, accepting yourself as an artist. I mean, that's all, we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Over here.
I just want to, Carnegie Hall was amazing. I think you gained a lot of new fans that didn't know you necessarily last night, because walking out of there, people were speaking your name on the street, and I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
But it got me thinking last night, because I've heard you cover After Weeks with Van Morrison before. If you could have Van Morrison do a cover of any one of your songs.
I mean, he wrote most of them. It's an amazing question. Thank you. I wouldn't even know where to start thinking about that. But there's a song, like, again, I come back to that song on my record, because I'm very much in these new songs. That's where my heart is, and as a creative person, your heart is always in your new music. It has to be, because that's where the excitement is. And so there's this song "Weight of the World," which I referred to earlier on. This big, long, ambling thing is kind of it was only when I listened back to it I saw such it rhymed so much with "When the Heart is Open," that song on Common One by Van. And so in a way, in the moment when I was channeling whatever I was doing, I was very much thinking about that song. And so in a way, to hear Van sing that wouldn't be unusual, because it would feel very similar to something he had done. But I've played Astro Weeks a lot, and when I was asked to do the show, I did want to play another song, because I wanted to do something that was new for me. But in the end of the day, I just thought, you know what, I know how I can really play that song. I know it's in my muscles. I know what to do with it. Even though last night it took a left turn. The pedal just.
So that's where you find that's where you find the challenge in it.
Yeah.
So, right here.
Sorry, my question follow-up is not as exciting as that one. Just selfishly, as a Canadian, I've heard you mention Canadian artists this evening. Is Leonard Cohen your favorite, and what would be your favorite Leonard Cohen song? If that's your favorite Canadian artist.
Yeah. I mean, favorites is a tough one, because I think favorites is something that we it's again that you can't reduce the arts to the stakes of sport, so there is no best. Yes, of course. Yeah. Yes, he's the best. And Avalanche from Songs of Love and Hate would be my favorite Leonard Cohen song of all time. There is no other. The rest of them are shit. I'm only kidding. No, there is for me, when I was 5 years old, on my 5th birthday, my mother was bathing. I remember very well. She was bathing me in the sink in the house we lived in, and she taught me Bird on a Wire. She had one of those little suitcase record players, and she had Bird on a Wire playing, and I loved the lyric "like a drunk in the midnight choir," because the only time my family ever went to church was on Christmas Eve at midnight. And I loved that, because you could see that the priest was really struggling. The room was full of drunks, and full of very devout people, and a lot of people with shame, and and the priest had to kind of handle this crazy crowd, and for me the dynamic just felt amazing, because he had to, the priest was digging deep. I mean, that was like,
that's a performance.
Yeah, he was firing it out, and he had to hold the room. And I loved Like a Drunk in a Midnight Choir, and so she taught me the song, and she taught my brother The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel, and I remember we both kind of learned both songs, but Bird on the Wire was mine and Sound of Silence was his. And in 2011 or 12, Leonard was given the Principal de Asturias. He was given an award in Spain by the royals in Spain, and I had the great opportunity of going and singing for him, singing his songs to him, and I got to tell him this story, that that I'd learned that song. But also there was another interesting Leonard story. I'll just divert a bit. When I was 15, Leonard had just released Various Positions, which is the album with Hallelujah on it, and my older cousin, who knew I was a big fan, bought me a ticket, and I was too young to go on my own, and we went along, and Leonard was playing two shows. He was playing a matinee show and an evening show. Back in those days, if a show sold out, they would put two shows on the same day, and so we went to the early show. But my cousin was epileptic, and during Famous Birenko, my cousin, through excitement, went into a fit, and he was like 5 or 6 rows back, and Leonard stopped the song and said, "Is that boy okay?" And we were basically taken out. It was a really difficult moment. Leonard stopped the show, and we went to the door, and the guy with a pass, who I now know was a tour manager, but then I didn't know who he was, gave us 2 tickets and said, "If he's okay, come back to the later show. We'd love to have you back." So, which is very nice. We went down to the hospital. My cousin was given a pill. He was fine. We got straight back on the queue, and we were queuing up for the next gig. We went in, and when we got in, they said, these tickets, okay, you're up in here. And they brought us up into the box, which was like because it was an old boxing stadium. And we're in the commentator's box watching the show, and my cousin has a really nice, comfortable seat, and he's taking care of him to give him a drink. And we were so grateful, and the show ended. So we got to see the show more or less twice. And we were so blown away. And the man with the pass came up and said, "Did you enjoy that?" "Yeah, oh, thanks so much. We were so happy. And how are you doing?" "I'm okay. No, I got a pill. I'm fine." And then they said, "Just wait here a moment." And so the crowd all filtered out, and of course Leonard walked out, came up the steps to the box, came into the room. "How are you?" And my cousin was like, "I'm grand now." And he shook my cousin's hand, and he shook my hand, and I remember at 15 having this really incredible sense. It's one thing to see a master on a stage, and you see there's a kind of but to see them, when a master walks into any room, something changes. When it's a mastery, I just mean mastery as this idea that people who are true to themselves. And he shook my hand, and I had this total moment of, because I'm young and I'm so intense, I'm like, there was a transference. I was like, and I walked out of there a changed person. I really had, and I was like, I had that sense. But in Spain, we got to sit down and have a glass of wine, and I got to tell him the story about my cousin. He didn't remember, but just totally, I wouldn't remember either. And we got to sing that song to him, and it was a very, really, really special experience. Yeah.
I should mention the speech that he gave for that event is the closing bit of this new book, of The Flame, of this new book of Leonard's poetry and uncollected writings and stuff. The speech to the Prince of Asturias is the last thing that's in there. So we could do one more. What have we got? Somebody to close us out right there. Yes. Yeah.
I make theater, and my boyfriend makes music, and we have an age-old argument of how much does the audience actually matter when you're creating work?
They're equal. Yeah, they're equal, and that's why making music in a studio with musicians that aren't part of your regular sort of gang makes things so much better. Not to say the irregular gang can't really inspire, and we can, but sometimes bringing new people into a situation, or when something is witnessed, it changes shape. What is that theory that when once something is
Heisenberg, whatever it is, once observing it changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
For instance, like yesterday, in Astro Weeks, I can't hit that note. There's a note in Astro Weeks I can't hit. And I can never hit it. And I don't practice at home, but occasionally I go, is my voice working? And I try to hit it, and I can never hit it. But you put an audience in front of that voice, and it hits it. It hits it no problem, because the energy that's coming from an audience, suddenly everything does step up. It's a fascinating thing. And, you know, we were talking last night with people backstage, and there was a lot of nerves and a lot of people I had it too. I almost felt like vomiting at one point, because I knew that I was on in a couple of songs, and I had that classic feeling of like, you know, here it is. Here's that, where the nerves just, they cripple you in that moment. And yet, when you walk on the stage, that just gets transformed into fuel, and it just, suddenly you're super present, and you're really able, and you go for it. And, you know, sometimes you fail, but that's okay, because it's all part of just, you know, what's more important is that you're there. It's not about getting it right. It's about trying. And so yes, I really believe that the audience is a very important part of the creative process.
Yep.
And performance. 100%. Now, of course, but there are musicians who would say, I completely shut the audience out. I just focus on the thing that I wrote. I'm not like that. Other people are like that, and they're really successful in that way. But I definitely have this thing that if I play in front of an audience or I go into a room, empathy is part of the thing that I operate, my operating system. So I'm feeling the room, and I'm feeling the dynamic. It doesn't necessarily mean that I always give the room what I think it wants. But I do feel like it has an impact for sure.
The other week I was speaking with a very pop singer, teenage girl pop singer. She said something really interesting that I'd sort of never heard articulated this way. But she said that you don't know the potential of a song until you sing it to an audience. That you don't know what a song can be. If you do it for yourself, you have this sense of it, but you don't actually know the capacity until other people hear it and you get that back. And I never actually heard that kind of said that way, but I thought it was really interesting.
I really agree with that. It's we sometimes we write songs and we think this will be a really good song live. I just feel like it will, and sometimes you play those songs and you're like, wow, it just didn't land. Because you're always hoping that when you sing something, you're hoping that it will land, and sometimes you can feel it landing, and other times you feel something just kind of bounce and go to the side, and it just doesn't connect. So it's true, and we don't necessarily always know what will translate. Sometimes it's the song that you least expected would translate does. So yeah, it's powerful. The audience really is. The audience is exactly half of the experience. And if the audience show up, and the band show up, and the audience are present, and the band are present, then something third, and the third element is invited in, and that element is that magic that we all want to be part of. Because it's not created by me or us. It's not created by you necessarily, but it's created by all of us. And that's the magic of gigs. That's why concerts are so powerful. You know, the band, but don't give the band too much credit. You know.
One thing that's so powerful when I see you is that when you go beyond the mic, you really connect with the crowd, just singing with your voice in space. I was just wondering how that felt, because there's so much sound when you have a microphone and you can't sound clear. Whenever you step beyond that mic, it's absolutely silent in that space. And your voice just in the music really echoes. How does that feel for you, having it be so sharp live versus it being a full raging crowd?
It's the most amazing feeling in the world. And it's not the fact that you have a rapt audience. It's the fact that we are all in this moment in agreement about something. And that's powerful. It's got nothing. You don't take ownership of that moment. You realize that you're part of something bigger. Advice I'd give to any musician who ever has to go and do a gig where the audience may be, lackluster, or people. Human beings, I guarantee you this from experience, cannot resist the human voice unaccompanied. So if you're ever at a gig and and the audience is just yapping away, and you take out your guitar and they don't stop yapping, and you're like, you got that feeling of dread of just sing unaccompanied, and I guarantee you every head will just go. there's something in us. It's natural. I don't know what. It's magical. That when you take away the speakers and you step beyond the lights, and you step truly into that presence, if you like, that there's something irresistible about it for yourself and for an audience. And of course, there are times when it doesn't work, but 99% of the time it will. And I can't explain why that is or what that is. When I was starting as a musician, my voice was very weak. I didn't have much of a voice at all. And I remember playing on the street. And on Grafton Street, the street's it's a little wider than this shop, the street. I would say probably about another 6 foot wider than this shop. And so the key with busking is to get your voice to bounce off the opposite wall. If you can sing loud enough that you hear a reflection come back, then you're using the muscles in a way that, and then you're going to be heard. And I've really taken that, like everything I know about music I learned on Grafton Street when I was a kid. And because there's something about playing music on the street. There's a complete leveler. Nobody's there to see you. Nobody cares. They're all on their way to do their thing. People are just busy about their day. You've taken out your guitar and declared yourself. And it's a huge moment. That moment of unzipping the guitar, taking it out, putting the guitar down, that's the moment, the most terrifying moment of any performance on the street. But once you get through that moment, you are soaring. And I would say that in terms of, I remember when Steve Kazee was doing Once on Broadway, he was asking me for some advice or what the songs were about, and I said the only advice I give you is just go busking, just get out on the street, because it'll humble you and it'll empower you, and that's the lesson of the street. It has it's like the ocean. It's completely it's ambivalent, and that's a great place to start with ambivalence, because that allows you to then sort of go, right, I can start from there. I never take for granted, for instance, here's a full room of people. I know my name is on something downstairs and your name is on something downstairs, and you're here to hear me talk, but I have to say that I just don't feel that way about this stuff. It's not like if I was going to sing, which I'm going to sing you a few songs in a minute, I never assume you're here to see me so I can kind of coast. You're always dealing with ambivalence, as opposed to feeling like you're dealing with, I've won this crowd already. You haven't. You're always winning the crowd. You're always winning yourself. You're always figuring it out. Like Springsteen says, you're only as good as your last gig, and it's true.
Let's see if he can win you clowns over. Let's see how we do here. Glen, thank you as ever.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
This is a song called "I'll Be You, Be Me." I'm not sure how it's going to sound. We're gonna give it a go. Yeah, I've talked enough. Your love's a bonny snare, traps me. Can you hear me? Got me hanging in midair. Now I'm swinging from the ceiling. But it's me that's looking now. It's me that's seeking something. When you're nowhere to be found, must I keep on looking? I'll be you, be me, and I'll be you. I'll take your truth, your lies, your secrets. How about you be me and I'll be you? I love your strength, your pride, your weakness. My love's an androgyne. She writes when I'm in slumber. My lover is all good things, and I'm the fool whose spell she's under. And she laid a silken thread, a warm scent in the evening. If you follow the trail of dead, you'll come upon the place she's sleeping. I'll be you, be me, and I'll be you, and we won't say no more about it. And how about you be me, and I'll be you, and we just leave it where we found it. You sing that with us. So that was the drum beat. If you listen very carefully, you can just hear Bowie go. Okay. Let's play Fool's Game. Okay. This is a song called Fool's Game, and it's a song about the love and how futile love advice is, and how when you have each other, you don't answer to anybody but the one you love, and that everybody else is just outside of that, and that's just that. Okay. It's a fool's game, lover that we have to play, crashing into each other, no convalescing. It's a leap of faith, lover that we blindly take, and And I'm taking it with you and no other, no hesitating. And if our minds they go and our bones they shatter, we'll put it on nobody but ourselves. It's an old refrain, lover, that we hear again, urging a cautious measure and sounding a warning. It's a thin escape, lover, that we hope to make when we're beaten, broken and battered beyond consoling. And the breezes blow and to the winds we're scattered, and we're fending for nobody but ourselves. Could you join us in this? It's a fool's game. When you've nothing but a heart to break, you better keep on breaking it, lover, until it opens. It's a speeding train, beating through the pouring rain, with no way to slow or stop it, and the tracks are broken. And like a rising wave, through the storms we gather, and we're falling on nobody but ourselves. Thanks a lot, everybody. You can hear everything all right? Yeah, good. This next song is a song called Don't Settle. And the song is really just a kind of a piece of advice to oneself, I suppose. But really, when I was writing this song, I was thinking a lot about Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie was someone I've been thinking a lot about for the last few years, the importance of his songbook and the importance of his position in American history, and the fact that he just reported on everything. The song doesn't sound anything like Woody Guthrie. It's not an ode to Woody Guthrie. I was just thinking about him. I was also thinking about some musicians from my own country, young David Keenan, who's just been through the city here in the last couple of weeks, Lisa O'Neill, as you mentioned, and just thinking about these people who have such great light in them, and just saying, just don't settle for second best. Just keep on digging. Don't stop, and don't sit back on your laurels. Keep going. So the song's really just about that. When you climb the hill of vision, as above, so it was below. Through the apathy and derision, each step ascending you took alone. And when they pin you in the corner, pay no heed to their droning on, 'cause you're not going back where you don't belong. Well, you rose up through the ranks now, and you worked hard for your luck. You've only got yourself to thank now, you and everybody else in the book. And there are hidden hands to guide you, other forces now at play. But you've got to learn to get out of the way. Whoa, whoa. Don't settle. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Not yet. Don't settle for less. May your song ring true and bright now, and be honed by your own hand, as the day gives way to night now. May it echo through the land. And when they turn your words against you, try to grind you to the ground, let them know that they might beat you, but they'll never turn you round. Whoa, whoa. Don't settle. Oh, 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 not yet. Oh, don't settle. And don't forget. When you sought no one's allegiance, you were cowed by no one's hand. You outgrew your antecedents, worked your own corner of the land. And when they finally come to face you, come to mind as seem you struck, may you bid them well and wish them luck. Don't settle, and don't forget what Liam Clancy said. No envy, no anger, no cruelty, no regrets. No enemy, no rancor, no incredulity, show respect. No enemy, no anger, no incredulity, no, not yet. No jealousy, no anger, no judgment on no one, lest you forget. Lest you forget what they did to you. Come on, rise off your knees, you're not being yet. Ah, you're not singing alone. No envy, no anger, no judgment on no one, lest you forget. getting at you. Coming on, you're not in the air. And you're not going back where you don't fit. Thanks, everybody. This next song we're going to play you is a song called Race to the Bottom. And it's... here's one we prepared earlier. The song title is... It sounds kind of like a socially conscious song title, but actually it's just a play on the... It's a play on the song title. It's A Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll. I just inverted it for fun. My confirmation name is Angus. I was the biggest AC/DC fan that I knew growing up. The song is really a kind of a document of a month in Paris, and so each line kind of relates to a moment in a day. And if you feel like it, I know, I know that we do tend to put pressure on you to take part. You don't have to at all, of course. But the refrain is, it's a long way to the bottom, we've been racing. If you feel like just joining in on that, it kind of sounds good when you just whisper it. Or just, not to say you whisper it in some, but just to sort of say it, as opposed to trying to sing it. And then there's a little melody in it that goes, what key are we in? What key are we? Give that a try. Amazing. Sort of felt like your words were getting into the books. Or no, if that melody was getting inside the books. They were hearing that on the inner pages. So. The sand, it's Mayday. The song's in my head once again. It's a long way down to the bottom, and we're racing. I'm coughing my lungs up on Rue des Irlandais, becoming a risk to myself. It's a long way down to the bottom, and we're racing. The radio silence and the anarchists are gathering names, dates, and lists for burning. It's a long way down to the bottom, and we're racing. Oh, how you move me, truly. Oh, how you set my heart aglow. Shadowing in with the crowds unnoticed. Somebody painted an X on my back. It's a long way down to the bottom, and we're racing. There's piss on the streets after dark in Paris. Even on dear Joan of Arc, she knows it's a long way down to the bottom, and we've been racing. Even the gods that send the rains down on us know that there's no one to be saved among us. They keep turning away, turning away. We're singing along now with the righteous people. The bullets will rain down from the mosques and steeples. They keep gunning away, gunning away. A taste for the wine and a woman's forgiveness. Man's in decline, oh, it's a nasty business. It's a long way down to the bottom, and we're racing. If you wanna know which way his loyalties are running, keep an eye on the money. It's a long way down to the bottom, and we're racing. Even the clouds as they rain down on us see a horizon that goes way beyond us. They keep drifting away, drifting away. And down in the dark, in the tick-tock alleys, time's running out and there's still bills to tally. We keep chipping away, chipping away. Oh. Baldwin and Brecht and the distance between us. It's a long way down to the bottom that we're racing. I'm rising up strong like a snake that's charmed, that handsome sailor on my arm. It's a long way down to the bottom, and we're racing. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. You'll really like this song. Don't go. Okay. So we're going to play you two more songs, and then we'll kind of throw it open to you a little bit. If you feel like it. Feel free to go home. I know it. The good news is it's not LA. You're not all going to leave at a certain time, necessarily. So in the large cast of musicians that played on this record. There's some amazing musicians that we really love and respect, and one of them is Eamon O'Leary, who's here in the front row. Please. Eamon's going to join us on this, although we don't have... Yeah, please. There's a wonderful bar on East 4th Street called Swift, the Jonathan Swift, and it's an incredible bar. I mean, it's when you go in there, you don't really, I mean, you commit, or you don't go in at all. You avoid the place, or you go in. But Eamon plays with a wonderful friend Jefferson, and sometimes plays in Swift, and it's always a really exciting thing to come to New York and sit in on that session. I hope we can hear you, Eamon. You think? Okay. No. Oh. Yeah. Give us that. Yeah, let's do that. This next song is a song called "The One I'll Come Back to Find," or "Leave a Light." This is probably I don't know what the name of it is yet. It's written on the record, and it's funny. We just saw our record. We just got our records, and we saw them for the first time today, and they're back there, and they look great. I'm really happy with that. It's such an exciting thing when you get a record and you see it for the first time. So, oh, wonderful. I had this song, and I came to the studio, and I just kind of knew that Eamon would know what to do with it, and so I sang him the melody, and he kind of harmonized the song in this way that you'll hear now, and I was really so happy. And again, another example of just getting out of the way of your song and not wanting to impose your own chords onto something. And so this is a song called "The One I'll Come Back to Find," or "Leave a Light." I don't know. Leave a light on in your lonely window, and the heart felt welcome in your eye. From far away on the deep black ocean, you're the one I'll come back to find. So say goodbye to the long, cold winter, and farewell to all we've left behind. And leave a light on and come out of the shadows. You're the one I'll come back to find. Sing the song that your mother taught you, of the gypsy heart that never rests, and wait a while for the arms that once held you, and pull them close into your breast, and say goodbye to the long cold winter, and farewell to all we've left behind, and leave a light on and come out of the shadows, 'cause you're the one I'll come back to find. Yes, you're the one I'll come back to find. Thank you. We always play longer than we're asked. It's not. It's not always said with as a badge of pride. Sometimes it's sometimes it's much to our failing. And everyone's gone, you know. We'll sing you one more song that we haven't played together since we recorded it, called "My Brother's Keeper," yeah, it's a song about the lane just outside my house, and getting to see the season pass on your laneway and the hedges, and see the flowers come and see them go away again, and such a wonderful thing for a traveling salesman like myself. To get to have the privilege of being in one place for a season, to watch it shift. And so this song is all about October, my favorite month in Ireland, my favorite month anywhere, but particularly in Ireland because it ends with Halloween, which is my favorite festival, pagan festival in Ireland. Very, very different to the festival you guys celebrate over here but it's exactly the same. But take away all of the witches and actually keep the witches, please. Keep the witches. Keep the witches, keep the snakes. St. Patrick famously took away the snakes out of Ireland, but we're really sorry he did. We need those snakes back, because the feminine has been stood upon by the church, and I'm happy to report that our country is coming around. It's finding in a very gentle way. It's kind of finding its identity again, and so this song is just a kind of a nod in that direction, a kind of a nod of tribute and thank you. First of October, Curtis! The 1st of October, the summer's over, the leaves are falling all around my door, the midnight walking Early morning talking, can't you hear us whispering? Walking across your floor, walking on your floor. We'll go out rambling, all through the brambling, the long shadows falling far out ahead. The rose hips have grown now, the year isn't slowed down. Your long hair and long dress, let them fall for me, let them fall for me. Well, I'm going deeper, my brother's keeper. I'm looking out for him the best I can. He's getting older, the year is colder. Gotta lean a little closer now, hear what he's saying, hear what he's saying. Come home, will you wait for me? Brother, put that weight on me, brother. Works don't lie there, ground up and dried there. They wait for impatiently your hands to find. Leaf through the pages, can't you feel the ages rise up like dust now in the sunlight there, in the sunlight. My brother's keeper, I'm looking out for him the best I can. Thank you. Okay, sure. Thank you. So last night at Carnegie Hall, I saw an incredible... What a sound. What is it? Whenever you speak about esoteric stuff, you hear loads of stuff. It just all starts getting... watching the people from Little Kids Rock were amazing. Watching you guys work and what you were doing and how confident you were on such a... It was their first ever concert, and what a place to have it. You know, where do you go after that? But I'd love you to play a song. I don't know. I don't even know if we have the right instruments for you guys, but I just think it could be. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, never played a guitar and sang clowns.
You can do it.
We got it.
You can do it.
All right. Got a good reason. Taking the easy way out. Got a good reason. Taking the easy way out now. She was a day tripper. One-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out. And I found out. She's a big teaser. She took me halfway there. She's a big teaser. She took me halfway there now. She was a day tripper. One-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out. And I found out. Tried to please her. She only played one-night stands. Tried to please her. She only played one-night stands now. She was a day tripper, Sunday driver, yeah. It took me so long to find out. And I found out. Day tripper, yeah. Day tripper,
That's Thomond and Solia, everybody. Give it up. Wonderful. It feels like a good time to end now. I just want to, I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank the people from Strand Bookstore for allowing us to do this here. It's the first bookshop I ever came into when I came to the city, and it's a place that I really cherish the hours that can while away here when you just wander in through the shelves. And I only actually discovered this room last year. I don't know how I hadn't discovered this room before, but this room is a very, very special atmosphere during the day. If you don't know the room, come up and visit it. It's got a very special feeling. And it's just a real joy. It was a real joy to play Housing Works Bookshop, and it's a real joy. I mean, it's a super special feeling to play Strand. It's a New York institution. It's a New York. It's a center of energy, and just to be surrounded by so many stories. It's a really special thing, and it really adds to the feeling tonight. And thank you for the questions you gave us, and thank you for the challenges. And if I could recommend a book before, just a book that I'm reading right now that I got here, a book called Gentrification of the Mind by Sarah Schulman. I think they have a couple of copies. I did check. I bought 2 copies of it, even though I have one, so I'll happily give these to anybody who would like them. This is it's a book about New York and about the incredible, well, with the generation between 1981 and 1996, the 80,000 people who died of AIDS in this city, and what it did to the city and how the city was transformed. In parallel to that, an incredible story, an incredible read, and a piece of history that's been very much gentrified, which is how Sarah would talk about it. It's been kind of brushed over, and it's an incredible part of this city's history. The very first time I ever came to New York, I remember walking on Mercer Street. I remember Mercer Street because it looked like the cover of the Bob Dylan record, you know, the freewheeling with the fire escapes, and it was a late summer evening, and I was walking. And I was so in love with this city. It was so new and like a movie. And I came upon a kind of a large pile of personal belongings, which for me was an absolute gold mine. Because there's so many stories and memories and thoughts, and there was photographs, personal photographs, photo albums of family history. And I was very, very moved and excited, and I sat among this pile. And I spent maybe 2 hours just going through each thing: medals, sporting medals, toothbrushes, just a person's life. And I was given over to wondering how this person's personal life was on the pavement, and I didn't understand at the time, and it took me a long time, and it took me until I read this book to realize what I was sitting in and enjoying. I was enjoying the personal belongings of somebody who had just died, and their stuff was just literally turfed onto the pavement, and the flat was cleaned up and rented out. And reading this book was a real revelation to me about my relationship with this city, a city that I absolutely love, and we're also incredibly romantically connected to it. So I think about that. I think about that person a lot, and every time I'm in the city, I think about beautiful images of a person's whole life. Anyway, I really want to thank Alan for the incredible and insightful interview. He's somebody I really truly admire, and I'm really glad that he gave over his time to come down and do this. And really nice to be presenting these songs in this incredible historic place. Everything about this feels right. So thank you.